2. Mark chapter 2. See, she get me all bothered. I get to thinking about her, just get me bothered. Mark chapter 2. Look at verse 13 and 14. It says, and he went forth again by the sea. We're talking about Jesus. And he went forth again by the seaside, and all the multitude resorted unto him, and he sought them. And he taught them. Thank you. And as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the receipt of custom, and said unto him, follow me. And he arose and followed him. And as he passed by, he saw Levi. Can Christ join the church or join your church? Number one, you need to stay alert even on a pass-by. You need to stay alert even on a pass-by. Sometimes people come into our lives, and oftentimes we are passing by them so quickly that we miss them. But Christ was the kind of person that did not miss people. He caught them even passing by. We must be willing to allow the Spirit of Christ to come into our church and into us so that we are willing to catch people even on a pass-by. Do you know that it's interesting to me that we often neglect or we forget to think about how God has really blessed us. Now you think about how old you are. Keep it to yourself, but just think about that for a moment. But think about how old you are. Okay? Let me ask you, I believe there's a lady sitting here that is a guest with us this morning. Do you mind if I point you out for a moment? Do you mind? Yes. Yeah, okay? Okay. I am 40-something. Okay. Normally, I go around the sanctuary and I shake everybody's hand, but this morning I was playing that organ. I'm Troy Shaw. Okay, Brenda, it is a pleasure to meet you. And please, I apologize for pointing you out because you are our guest and I didn't want to just put you on the spot. I want you to think about something. It took me 40-plus years to meet Brenda. It took me 40-plus years to meet Brenda. Do you think that the Lord has done that by happenstance? Or do you think that I ought to savor this moment because it took 40 years to get here? When I was born, she and I had already this date to meet for me to say, welcome. 40 years to get there. So how important is that? Every moment of your life should be important. Every time you meet somebody new, you ought to think, wow, December the 15th, 2013, 40 years to meet her. What's the purpose? All right. Do I want to be born and wait 40 years to meet somebody and they walk away from me and say, boy, that was a horrible experience? Is that what I've been living 40 years for, to finally meet somebody and they say, wow, after I met that fella, he's the meanest person in the world? Or would I want for 40 years to go by and finally I got it good enough to have a smile on my face and welcome people into my life and say, I'm glad to meet you, you're appreciated in life. You are not here by happenstance. Even on a pass-by, you need to, as my friend Rich says, greet people and allow them to know, hi, my name is Rich. Meet folks. Be nice to people. Smile. Don't just pass through people's lives doing nothing. Don't just pass by people and not speak and be unfriendly and unkind. You've been placed here for a reason. You are here in order to pass by and notice people. You might be the only person that other person meets today. That person might be just on the brink of losing it all, losing their mind, suicide, and whatever else. You passed by and you had the opportunity to impart something wonderful in their lives. Don't take it for granted. Just because the meeting isn't 3 and 4 hours long, and just because you haven't known them for 100 years, be willing to embrace even on a pass-by. And so, not only that, it says that he saw Levi. He saw him. And so he didn't just pass by him, he noticed him. He's the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the receipt of customs, and he said unto him, or Jesus said unto him, follow me. You need to be a leader. You need to be a leader. Because you know what? You're going to meet some people in your life that are mean. I'm so glad that Brenda was nice to me this morning. Because some folks would say, don't come back here. But there are going to be some people in your life that are going to be mean. They're going to be bothersome. They're going to be bothered, by you. There are going to be some people in your life that aren't going to be mean, whether it be in the grocery store or whether it be at work. The question is, how well can you lead them on the path to where you are? All right. See, Sister Washington, it is my goal to diffuse situations. See, you don't do things, sometimes there are things that happen haphazardly, but most of the time, things that really happen in life, they happen because you're determined that they'll happen. All right. Okay, you're determined that they'll happen. You know this is your purpose for this to happen. And so, Dorian, my purpose, my goal is to diffuse situations. My goal is not to allow you to just go totally nuts on me. My goal, and I'm not saying that it's always perfect. I think I'm perfecting it. But my wife and children can tell you, I go into a restaurant and sometimes you meet a waitress, she really gets you, or a waiter, and they're having a bad day. So what can we do? Just think about this. I can either tell her, I don't like this food. It's too cold. And what's wrong with you today? I waited a whole 15 minutes before you even brought me a glass of water. Your attitude stinks. Get your manager for me. Now, how does that turn out? Now, we're both upset. We're both bothered. I'm not getting ready to get her fired. They neither. And I'm not getting ready to serve tables. So what's the point? The only thing I can do is possibly agitate her enough, Montasia, so she can spit in my food or something. Or I can determine that I'm not going to allow this situation to take place. I can say, oh my goodness, how are you? I'm tired. I'm just waiting till this shit get up. I understand. Sometimes you work all day and you just feet hurt and everything else. I've had a long day too. You have, but you just don't understand how it is around here. But I feel you. I don't really want to bother you, but somehow this is cold. I know it's not your fault. It's probably the cook. Oh, it's cold. He's been doing this all day. Next thing you know, my food is gone. She's fixed it. She's brought it back. Sometimes she takes a little off the bill. Sometimes she brings me some extra something because, I've been troubled and bothered. But it's all because of the way you treat people and how you talk to people and what you say to people and what your purpose is. You need to be the leader. If somebody is leading you to a place of a negative spirit, then you have the authority to lead them to the positive. If they're leading you to a place that's unhappy and mean inside, you have the authority to lead them to a place that is happy. You have the authority at work. You are the head and not the tail. You've been given the power of Jesus Christ, and he has all power in heaven and in earth. And so your enemies don't have to be your footstools. Your enemies can be your friends if you try. You can change the whole world because you must be the leader. You are the one who will lead situations and lead people. And so the question becomes, are you willing to accept that challenge, not to just pass by, but to stop by and lead somebody? And so look at verse 15. And it came to pass that as Jesus sat at meat in his house, many publicans and sinners sat also together with Jesus and his disciples. for there were many, and they followed him. And when the scribes and Pharisees saw him eat with publicans and sinners, they said unto his disciples, how is it that he eateth and drinketh with publicans and sinners? You know, I love the way that Pastor Bill put this. Pastor Bill said that Levi was the Vin Diesel type because he was a tax collector and he came to knock on your door and take your stuff. And so he wasn't some, Millie Mouse kind of person. He was really an aggressive kind of person. To be a tax collector in those days was a cutthroat business. So we're not talking about just some guy sitting on the side of the road. We're talking about somebody who probably knew how to fight, probably knew how to really rough you up a little bit, because sometimes you had to do that, Brother Danny, in order to get your money. We're talking not just a regular guy. We're talking about what you call a roughneck. We're talking about what you call a mobster. He's a collector. He comes to get the money. And so Jesus is now sitting with him and some of his friends, some other, shady people or some other people that are like that. And he's come to eat with them. And the people are having a problem with that. Well, here's my question to you, or here's what I should say to you, is that dinner shouldn't destroy you. Dinner shouldn't destroy you. Far too often, we're just afraid of people. And especially in the church, whatever your opinion might be, it shouldn't destroy you. Do you know, really, to be quite honest, I think that sometimes we're afraid of sinners because we think it's contagious. When in fact, the real fact is, we all flee from the appearance of sin and evil. We shouldn't indulge in things that we think are going to harm us in that way. But at the same time, we ought to have power and authority and believe in the presence of the Holy Spirit. You should recognize that you ought to be stronger than that. You ought to be stronger than that. You ought to be able to have dinner. You ought to be able to talk to people. Because what would this look like if we remained isolated? We can't do evangelism isolated. You can't win others to Christ or disciple anybody if you just stay in and of yourself. The fact is, oftentimes we want the Lord to package people and bring them to the church already just like us. But the fact is, he doesn't bring them like that. There are people who are in need, who are prostitutes. There are people who are in need that are thieves, liars, whatever. And there are people who are in need. And if we feel like they're untouchables, then who is going to take the gospel to them? Who is going to take love and joy and peace and kindness to them? And so dinner ought not destroy you. It ought not destroy you just because somebody is not like you. And they were wondering about that. They wondered. I've heard one of the things that I've never been, well, if I have been, nobody's told me. One of the things I've never been criticized for, and I do know that there have been folk that criticize ministers in our faith, not so much in others, but in our faith they criticize ministers if they see him in a bar. He eats in the bar, he must be, just a terrible person. And part of it is, I think that, number one, you shouldn't slip and slide and tell lies and say, well, I don't go to the bar. Well, I've never told that lie. Fact is, I do go, I don't drink. But I go, and our deacons know it, and I told them, I said, well, if y'all got a problem with that, then you might as well fire me, because I go. And I go and I eat, and I sit and talk to people. Now, I don't go to dives, because that's not what I go for. But if I hear they got a good sandwich over there, I will go and eat. And as I go to eat, I will sit and talk to people. Now, I will tell you, there's one particular place, they serve all vegan food, and as you know, I'm vegan. And so I would have ever imagined that this place would even serve vegan food. You would think they'd serve something else. And I've taken a couple of our deacons there, and we've gone and ate. And we suspect that it might even be a gay bar, to be quite honest. But we go. I've met people there. I've talked about the church to people and whatnot while I'm sitting there eating my burger. And do you know, when I left that bar, I'm just as saved today as I was when I went in there? Your religion is suspect if you feel like somebody can take it away from you. See, the joy that he's given to me, the world didn't give it to me, and the world can't take it away. What he's given to me, I'm able to do. Now, I know the tradition of the church says, oh, that's filthy. But look at the text. Jesus went to the sinner's house and sat down with his friends and had dinner. And so in that same vein, Sister Morel, I go, I have my dinner, I pray for them, and I see people, and I know people. I invite them to come to our church. I tell them about our website. Sometimes I leave a card, somebodyprayedforyou.com. Sometimes I leave one that says, you are appreciated, and so glad. You know, Rich taught me to use these little cards. I drop those little cards all over the place. And so the gospel is not just to be proclaimed in the church. And if we're really going to invite Jesus into it, then we must recognize that it is not always crystal clean and pure like we want it to be. But there are going to be some characters in your life that you need to share the gospel with. Dinner won't destroy you, okay? Look at verse 16. And when the scribes and Pharisees saw him eat with publicans and sinners, they said unto his disciples, how is it that he eateth and drinketh with publicans and sinners? Watch out for the high and mighty. Watch out for the high and mighty. There's so many people that will tell you how to do it when they're so wrong themselves. Boy, if the lights could come on one night and you could see what was going on in the world, you would probably be surprised at what you see. Because there's a whole lot of things done in darkness by folk who are supposed to be so high and mighty. And so oftentimes the folks who wear religion on their sleeves and so on and so forth, look around. Is our world any better because of it? What has Fox News done for you lately? You know, anymore, I don't necessarily know Sister Washington, if I could go, as they say, politically right or left. I don't know. They both seem like they got some issues. I'm going God's way. But my point here is, now you listen on the media, everybody thinks they're right. And it doesn't matter what you do, you're wrong. You're just wrong. They just fight back and forth. That one's wrong and this one is wrong and so on and so forth. And after a while, it gets to the point where you just kind of throw your hands up and say, you know what? And it's created apathy because people are tired of just watching folks fight back and forth. But here's the fact. Whether you are the Democratic left and you say you love Jesus, or you're the Republican right and you say you love Jesus, there's still a fact in America that children, they reported this week that we have over 160 or 170 some deaths by gun, murder of children, and the average age was 6. Just this past year. Shot. Most of them in their own homes. We still have people who come into this church in need of food that work, which I don't even understand, to be quite honest. I can't even understand. And I think that there's something wrong with your Christianity if you can justify that to be okay. For somebody to go to work and still can't eat. Somebody come into church and say, I'm out of toilet paper, but I work every day. Just to be human should make you have compassion for a person to think that they deserve, especially if they work every day, food, shelter, and toilet paper. Where are we as a society if people are having to beg for those basic items and they work every day? Dr. Littlefield, that really bothers me. And it should bother any Christian who goes to church and they know that they are a CEO of a company. And they go to work and they realize that they're making several million a year. And somebody arrives at their company who can't afford toilet paper. Something about that should make us very sad. And so these folk who are talking big do very little. Let me go a step further. Some of our churches aren't doing much either, because Christ is not there. And somebody said, okay, now you're talking wrong. I watch TV and I listen to TV preach. Okay, you listen to me. But I want to know whether you're flying you around in a jet or are you flying food around in a jet. I don't care if you have a jet for yourself to fly over to the poor people to preach to them for a few moments. What I want to know is whether or not you got the Spirit of Christ to feed the multitude. Because Jesus was not just a fellow who stopped by and did half the work. He fed physically and spiritually. He was healing. He wasn't just going around talking a good game. He was working. He was doing. And so we've now got churches who glorify this whole idea of a man flying around in a jet, driving around in Rolls Royces and so on and so forth. You can get mad at me if you want to, because I know he's preaching prosperity on the TV and he got you fooled and believing that you're going to end up just like him. No, you're not. Here's what I want to know. If I were going to believe that, Sister Vicki Williams, I have enough smarts. And I didn't even get that in school. I got that at home. I got enough smarts to know that if you tell me that if I sow into your ministry, I'm going to be wealthy and wise and all of that just like you. The first thing I'm going to do, Brittany, is I'm going to get in my hoopty and I'm going to drive around the church parking lot. And if the only Rolls Royce on the lot belongs to the pastor, then I'm going to be suspect. Because if everybody's going to be wealthy just because they sow into his ministry, that means shouldn't be nothing but Rolls Royces sitting all around the church. If you're going to be wealthy, then I want to know how many people here have a Fortune 500 company. I don't want just the preacher to be rich. If he's promising me to be wealthy, then you need to ask some questions. Next time you send money to that mega ministry, and I'm not against mega ministry if they're doing ministry, but I am against mega theft. We just received a Christmas card in the mail from one of the TV preachers. I said, oh, how nice. They sent us a Christmas card. I opened the Christmas card, and Sister Ruffin on the inside, it had an envelope. I'm thinking you could at least give me a Christmas card without begging. And so, I mean, again, I have questions. If you're going to send money to some of these ministries, send them a letter and ask them for a report of the ministry that they do. Ask them how do they calculate their salaries and wages, and what do they use their private jets and things like that for. Ask them that, because I believe in good ministry. Let me be practical. I can take this moment to be practical. I'm sure Deacon Palmer said, yeah, be practical. You can give money to the Feed organization. And if you're a Republican, that's good, because President Bush's granddaughter started the Feed organization. Just Google it, Feed. And Feed is so wonderful that if you give them money, they'll even give you something back. They'll send you a bag or purse or something. There is the Clean Water organization, Clean Water. And right now they're doing water in Philippines. They're doing clean water. They're digging wells. They've dug wells all over Africa. There's Kiva, K-I-V-A, started by our former President Bill Clinton. That's for you Democrats. Y'all got something for everybody. Kiva, our teens gave to Kiva this week. They're supporting a group of people in, I want to say Africa, that's doing a soda pop business or something like that so they can get on their feet. There are local organizations such as our Faith Missions. And you don't even have to just give them money. You can put together a bag of toiletries. And when you go to the grocery store, pick up some extra things of deodorant. Pick up some extra towels and rags and things and take them down there. Those homeless folk will be glad to have that. Razors, those kind of things. Put them in a little plastic bag and just carry them down there. And anytime between 9 to 5, you walk in the door and they'll be so glad to receive the items. Write a check, send it to them. They'll be glad to get it. There are organizations in your community, there are organizations across the world and across the state that need our help. And they'll be glad for you to give. United Way has all different kinds of funds. The Columbus Foundation, all kinds of funds. And so don't just talk a good game. Don't be high and mighty and not put your money where your mouth is. Help somebody. And remember, as I've said to this congregation, again, you don't hear your pastor up begging. I don't need to. The Lord said that your seed, that David said about the Lord, he said that he had never seen the righteous forsaken, nor the seed begging for bread. I don't have to get up and beg because of the power of the Lord. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with God. I don't have to get up and beg because the Lord has blessed this church. Matter of fact, we've often told our visitors, don't give. One visitor once told me, do they really mean that? I said, yeah. He put his check back in his pocket. I said, praise the Lord. But, you don't have to beg when you got God on your side. And so I've asked this congregation this year, I've asked you to set aside a budget for something other than yourself. Set aside a mission budget in your household. I'm not asking you to give that to the church. Now, I'm not asking you to stop giving the church. I'm not saying give that to the church. I'm saying find an organization, a charity that's worthwhile and invest in it. If you have trouble finding it, call the church office. We'll find you something that matches your goal or whatever you want to support. Do something for somebody else. I don't care if it's just 1% of your income or 10% or 5% of your income. Give somebody else something and watch the Lord bless you. Watch him bless you. Let me tell you this one last thing and we'll go ahead on. Look at verse 17. When Jesus heard it, after they said that, he was sitting with sinners and whatnot, when he heard it, here's what he said. He said, they that are whole have no need of the physician, but they that are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Can Christ join your church? Because number one, Christ is the kind of person that's alert and is alert even on a pass by. Christ is the kind that's going to lead. Christ is the kind of person who doesn't let dinner destroy him. Christ is the kind that watches out for the high and mighty, but then Christ knows his purpose. We must know our purpose. Because I know that oftentimes the church has been a club where we help each other. But the fact is, the purpose is for us to help the other and not each other. The purpose is for us to spread the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. Our purpose is that we've been called to the lost and not the saved. We've been called not to get so excited just because we know somebody's from another church. We've been called not to just deal with folks who are like us. We have not been called just to deal with the clean folk who have already showered well and they smell good. We are not just called to deal with people who have money. We are called to deal with those who are the least and the lost. Come on now, make it plain. We're called to deal and to love and to share kindness with people who are not like us. We're called to share the gospel with the mentally ill. We're called to share the gospel with young people. We're called to share the gospel at the convalescent center with seniors. We're called to hold hands with those who are dying with AIDS. They might leave today. We're called to reach. We're called to love. For Jesus said that you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. For some of us, maybe we've gotten older and we don't see ourselves going on the foreign mission field, but at least encourage someone else. I hear us, and I'm slowly trying to change the paradigm in this church. I hear us, oftentimes we talk about our children Somebody's going to become a singer. I've heard kids say that they're going to become rappers, and some say they're going to become football players and basketball players and so on and so forth, and we get excited about that. But do you know, Brother Kirby, in the last 70 years in this church is 70 years old. I think I know some of the history before I arrived. And the fact is, in that time, since Sister Kelly and I have been around, we've been in this church a little over 40 years, we haven't produced not one NFL star from this church. There hasn't been one NBA star that has come out of this church yet. Do you know any rappers that are famous? I don't know any rappers. I don't know anybody who is a famous singer. I don't know a famous actor that came out of this church. But what I do know is I know some people that left AEP pretty good. I know some people that left the state good. I know some people on the way from leaving the city pretty good. And the gas company, and I know people who have worked in all different kinds of companies. I know some folks that have graduated from college and have come back to this church and they've done very well in their life. And so what I've said is, rather than us to think about producing superstars on a basketball court, which we've never done, rather than to focus on that, what I've said is, let's produce some good missionaries. Some people who we are continually saying to them, you have a responsibility to graduate from college and then give at least 2 years of your life in service. Our teens have heard this over and over and over and over again. And I said to them this week, I normally don't share things that we talk about, but I can say things that I talked about. But they weren't talking, they just listened. I said to our teens this week that somebody put out a report and they said that Nelson Mandela came from the last generation of leaders, and that this generation will not produce any leaders. They said that this generation does not have the environmental issues, the social issues that cause them to want to do anything. This generation, they called them somewhat lazy and apathetic and said that they will not produce leaders. And I said to them, Sister Colson, that whoever came up with that study should have called Liberty Hill. Because as I sat around the table, I sat around the table each week with 7 to 10 teens. The fact is, out of those young people, we will have leaders.